The man had a gun aimed at my wife's face, hands shaking, eyes bulging with false authority right there in our front yard. All because she jogged past the HOA clubhouse without an ID badge. What he didn't know, and what I would have paid real money to witness dawning on his face, was that the woman he just tried to intimidate with a knockoff Glock was a current Delta Force operative. She'd been back from an undisclosed mission for exactly 2 days. Her field gear was still packed. And now here she was facing a rent-a-cop wannabe holding a pistol sideways like he learned it from a bargain bin action movie. I knew she could have disarmed him with a rubber band and a paperclip, but to her credit, she gave the guy a chance to stand down. He didn't take it. That's when everything started to unravel. We'd moved into the suburban paradise to get away from noise. The irony's not lost on me, considering my wife once diffused IEDs in a thunderstorm during a hostage rescue. But she craved calm, wanted a garden, some chickens, maybe early morning jogs with no drama. Me? I'm a cybersecurity consultant and a basement dweller by nature. All I needed was a fiber connection and a place to code in peace. The neighborhood we found seemed perfect on paper. Just outside the city limits, marketed as a secure, family-focused sanctuary. The brochures used words like community spirit and monthly optional socials. Nowhere did it mention cosplay commandos pretending to be the law. We should have known something was off the moment we saw the golf carts. 4 of them parked in formation outside the clubhouse. Matte black with NSD stenciled in bold white letters on the side, Neighborhood Safety Division. They looked like bargain bin SWAT units if SWAT units had cup holders and garden gnome stickers. One even had flashing blue lights zip-tied to the roof. I thought it was part of the HOA's over-the-top Halloween setup. Nope. They were dead serious. These were the same people who gave us a warning on day 2 for letting our leash dog stop and sniff a fire hydrant. We kept to ourselves at first. My wife, fresh from deployment, spent her time setting up cameras and organizing the garage with military precision. Habit, not paranoia, she always said. It helped her ease back into civilian rhythm. Meanwhile, I buried myself in code, headphones on, trying to ignore the knock on our door from Nancy Lockwood, the HOA president. She showed up with a badge, 3 clipboards, and the saccharine smile of someone who'd never once been told no. I'm available 24/7 for community-related concerns, she chirped, then handed us a printed rulebook so thick it had a table of contents. I flipped it open and read, "No drying laundry outdoors. Grass height must not exceed 2.75 inches. Residents may not appear intimidating during recreational activity." I asked, "What exactly does that mean?" She smiled like I was 6 years old and said, "You know it when you see it." That's when I realized we'd walked into a cult with property lines. My wife? She just nodded politely, thanked her for the welcome packet, and closed the door like she hadn't spent the last 10 years extracting hostages under enemy fire. She's good like that, calm, quiet, always composed. Which is why what happened on day 8 floored me. Started like any other morning. She threw on a hoodie, tied her sneakers, and told me she was going for a quick jog. I brewed coffee, settled into my desk chair, and opened up a terminal. About 10 minutes in, I got a motion alert from our front camera. I assumed it was a package drop. But when I checked the feed, my stomach dropped. 2 NSD golf carts were parked diagonally across the street. My wife stood completely still. In front of her was a middle-aged man, belly hanging over his tactical vest, shouting and pointing a gun sideways, of course. I dropped my mug and sprinted out the door. By the time I got there, the scene had escalated. 2 more NSD officers stood behind him like synchronized backup dancers. All of them wore mismatched gear and confusion on their faces. My wife, calm, steady, breathing slow. Her eyes never left the gun. I moved in, about to shout, but then I saw her right hand twitch ever so slightly, just enough for me to know she was in control. She was giving the man a chance. He was shouting about ID. About how she looked suspicious. About how she was jogging in a restricted zone without HOA credentials. Who the hell jogs with a badge? She kept her tone low, steady. Are you law enforcement? He puffed up. We're HOA police. That's higher than city cops here. That's when I saw a tiny smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. She gave him one last warning. Sir, I'm going to ask you to lower your weapon. For your safety. He didn't. And then it happened. One bling, the gun hit the pavement. Next blink was face down, arm twisted behind his back in a hold so clean it probably had a military acronym. She wasn't even breathing hard. She leaned down and whispered something to him. I didn't hear it, but his eyes went wide like he'd just seen goat or death. Cops arrived 5 minutes later. The fake cops started yelling about resisting HOA authority and assault on a peacekeeper. One real officer looked at my wife, paused, then asked for ID. She showed him something from a slim, waterproof wallet. He scanned it, looked up at the NSD clowns and said, "Ma'am, you're good to go." That was it. No questions. No further comments. They left. And when Nancy Lockwood arrived 10 minutes later, she found her golden boy holding an ice pack to his ego. You'd think that would be the end. Nope. Nancy took it personally. She declared war. Not just on my wife. On us. What she didn't realize Cal have realized was that she just picked a fight with someone who could disable an entire insurgency with a ballpoint pen and an old map. That evening, she called an emergency HOA meeting. It was held at 7 p.m., and by 6:30, the sidewalks were lined with lawn chairs, popcorn, and coolers. Someone even live-streamed it. Nancy strutted onto the stage wearing a tan vest decorated with HOA pins, a Bluetooth headset, and the confidence of a dictator addressing a fake army. Behind her, a whiteboard read, Emergency Response Strategy. Stick figures were labeled Threat Actor and Heroic Defender. The defender had muscles that would make The Rock jealous. She called the incident a violent attack on our community peacekeepers. Then she gestured to the chair where the disarmed HOA captain sat, arm in a sling, expression somewhere between embarrassment and a bad cheese hangover. I raised my hand. Nancy squinted. Yes, Mr. Harper. Quick question, I said. You said she has a known history of aggression? Nancy nodded solemnly. Right, I said. Because I live with her and she's never raised her voice. She raises chickens, though. Unless one of them got rowdy, I don't see the aggression. A few people chuckled. Nancy didn't. She claimed it was a misunderstanding. That they believed my wife was casing homes. Because get this, she was jogging with earbuds and a true crime podcast. That suggests intent, Nancy said. It was so absurd, I didn't even have a comeback. But then the footage rolled. One of the HOA guys had been wearing a body cam, syncing it to his cloud account like a real cop. Some genius teen hacked it and uploaded the full video. 5 neighbors had brought laptops. When the screen showed my wife jogging, then stopping, confused, then getting a gun in her face, everyone gasped. When she disarmed the guy in 3 seconds flat, the room went dead silent. Then someone muttered she should be running the HOA. Nancy flipped out, slammed her clipboard, called it unauthorized footage. But it was too late. The room turned. People started asking questions about budgets, training, authority. And Nancy? She didn't have answers. That night, my wife sat on the porch sipping tea. You're famous now, I said. She smirked. Someone made a gif of me disarming him. Over 2,000 shares? But we both knew Nancy wouldn't back down. And she didn't. She started sending fines. Excessive aggression. Failure to display ID. Running with hostile energy. Total, $1,470. My wife flipped the letter over and wrote 3 things. Names, dates, and violations. She just escalated, she muttered. Nancy passed 6 new rules overnight, none of them legal. One said residents had to wear visible ID outdoors. Another gave HOA officers the power to issue fines on site. Then came the clause, any threat to community peace could be expelled. Expelled. Like it was a damn boarding school. My wife didn't flinch. She filed FOIA requests, dug into public records, cross-referenced payments to a landscaping company called Verdant Oak LLC. Turns out, it didn't exist. Just a shell company tied to Nancy's cousin. Over 3 years, they'd funneled $180,000 through it, claiming they installed fountains, repaved roads, and planted gardens. In reality, 2 fountains. 0 new roads. And the only garden was a pile of weeds behind the clubhouse. We compiled it all. Sent it to a federal auditor. Within 48 hours, the board received a formal inquiry. Nancy panicked. Locked the clubhouse. Claimed my wife was leading a coordinated domestic threat unit. She hosted a live stream in front of an American flag, wearing a blazer 3 sizes too big, calling herself Madam President. My wife just smiled and printed a cease and desist order, federal seal and all. The next morning, a A courier in mirrored sunglasses delivered it to Nancy's porch. She stood frozen for a full minute before fleeing inside. After that, patrols vanished. Golf carts went still. And my wife, she launched Operation Curb Appeal. She used flyers, signs, and calm logic. She listed fake violations, fake expenses, nepotism. Within a week, 30 lawns had signs that read, "Smile you re being fined for blinking." Then came the public hearing. My wife stood before the city council and laid everything out. Nancy tried to counter with a slideshow of clip art and a photoshopped pic of my wife next to a tank. It didn't work. A councilman asked, "What's your background?" My wife replied, "I currently serve in a classified capacity within a U.S. Army Tier 1 unit." One of the council members, a retired colonel, smiled and said, "Welcome home, ma'am." After that, game over. Nancy was fined, banned from HOA service, and slapped with fraud charges. The HOA disbanded. My wife resumed her jogs. The neighborhood healed. And just as peace returned, Nancy showed up again, dropped a legal folder on our porch, claiming she was the real victim. My wife didn't even blink, just forwarded it to the feds. Then one night, a black SUV rolled up. A man stepped out and handed my wife a sealed envelope. She read it, nodded, and said, "When do I leave?" "Transport's ready at dawn," he replied. She packed light. No fanfare. Just left a note on my desk. Nancy was just the warm-up. This is the mission. She was gone by sunrise. The new HOA president? Tom. Retired postal worker. First order of business? Don't be a jerk. Best rule ever.